Welcome to Whispers in the Shadows. I'm Christina, and today I'll be reading The Hiker. Tom had always found peace in the wilderness. He wasn't some reckless adventurer, just a man who loved the outdoors. After weeks of deadlines, city traffic, and constant noise, he craved solitude. That's why he chose Pike's Peak. The trail was said to be moderate, scenic, and well traveled, just challenging enough to get lost in his own thoughts. He set out on the trail by mid-morning. The air was crisp, cool enough to sting his cheeks, and the sky stretched wide and blue above the trees. Since he didn't plan to be gone long, he packed a light, a thermos of coffee, a sandwich, a paper map, and a few odds and ends that always seemed to live in the bottom of his backpack. The first few hours were just what he had hoped for. The steady crunch of dry leaves beneath his boots, the calm rhythm of his breath, and the occasional flutter of birds overhead. Peaceful. But by early afternoon, heavy clouds began to creep in, hanging low and dark. The temperature fell more quickly than he had anticipated, and a biting wind stirred, sharp, restless, unwelcoming. He pulled his jacket tighter against his neck and pressed on. His thoughts drifted, lost in the hush of the woods. He didn't notice when the trail markers vanished. He didn't realize he'd missed a turn until the path beneath his boots disappeared. But by then, it was too late. Tom stopped and pulled out his map. He scanned the lines and symbols, but none of it matched where he was. Then awareness crept in. Not just that he was lost, but that he had been lost for longer than he realized. His phone flickered with a single bar, but no signal came through. He turned back, hoping to retrace his steps, but the trees seemed to shift and multiply, each one a mirror of the last, trapping him deeper within the woods. The sky darkened into a heavy, suffocating gray, and panic began twisting in his chest. "You've done this before," he whispered. "You'll find your way again." No matter which way he turned, the path dissolved into shadows. Then the snow started to drift down, light at first, then harder, blanketing the ground. The chill pierced his bones with unforgiving cold. Hours dragged on, endless and unforgiving. He'd lost all sense of time. His fingers were frozen and useless, his legs weak and unsteady. He stumbled again and again, snagged by cruel roots, thrown down by treacherous ice, and with each fall, hope slipped further away. Finally defeated, he sank to the ground and crawled beneath the twisted, leafless tree. There, shivering and hollow, he curled into himself. No strength left to fight, no will left to move. He simply waited to be swallowed by the cold and silence. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer out into the universe, knowing it may be his last. As he slowly opened them, he saw a faint, flickering light weaving through the trees. At first, he thought his mind was betraying him, but even if it was a cruel illusion, it was something he'd had to reach, or death would surely claim him. A fragile, haunting hope just beyond the darkness. Tom stumbled through the woods, icy branches scraping his face and snagging his jacket. His eyelashes were frozen shut against the biting wind. Every breath was painful, but still he moved forward, drawn to the cabin nestled between snow-covered pines, just like something out of a storybook. Tom finally reached the cabin. He didn't even lift his hand to knock, and the door eased open on its own, groaning on its hinges to reveal a flicker of warmth spilling from within. He stood there swaying in the doorway, half frozen, half dreaming. Some part of him knew this couldn't be real, just a final mercy from a mind slipping into darkness. But he stepped forward anyway. If this is where his dying thoughts led him, he would follow. Better to surrender to the illusion of a rescue. An older man appeared in the doorway. He was cloaked in a heavy flannel shirt. His silver-streaked beard framed his face worn by time, eyes shadowed but kind. Tom could barely move, teetering on the edge of death. He stayed there leaning heavily against the cabin's rough wooden frame, looking into the man's eyes. The man said nothing, just stepped aside, his gaze steady and unreadable, inviting him in without a word. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of burning pine. As Tom stepped inside, each movement a struggle. The darkness itself was clinging to him, trying to pull him under. The door closed slowly behind him, sealing out the howling wind. For a moment, the warmth seeped into his frozen limbs, and for the first time in hours, he allowed himself to feel hope. But beneath that hope, a whisper of dread curled in the back of his mind, wondering what kind of salvation this place offered. Tom blinked slowly, his body sinking deeper into the couch. The fire's warmth reached him at last, but it felt strange somehow. The man crouched by the fire, tossing another log onto the flames. "You're lucky," he said, without looking up. "Not many find this place." "I thought I was going to die out there," Tom replied. "You were close," the man said. "Closer than you think." Tom's eyes caught something beside the fireplace, an old, worn rucksack, patched and faded, too well loved to be a decoration. "You are a hiker?" Tom whispered, the realization stirring something uneasy in his chest. Jack didn't look up from the fire. "I was." Tom swallowed hard and asked, "What happened?" He knew something was wrong. The cabin was too still, too empty. No food, no supplies, just a fire burning. A long silence hung in the room. Jack's voice broke it, low and steady, heavy with regret. "I stayed behind, helped someone who was lost, gave them everything I had. I watched them walk down the mountain, alive." His eyes stayed fixed on the fire, flickering shadows danced across his weathered face. "I never made it out." Outside, the wind clawed at the cabin, as if trying to rip it from the earth and devour everything inside. Tom sank into the couch, his limbs heavy, his eyes gritty with exhaustion and cold. He couldn't keep them open no matter how hard he tried. Maybe he was still out there, curled beneath a tree, snow creeping over his body. Maybe this was nothing more than a final kindness from a fading mind. But the fire was warm and the air smelt of pine and smoke. Tom let the weight take him. If this was death, it was softer than he had ever imagined it would be. The next morning, a search party found Tom curled beneath that pine tree, half buried in snow. His pulse was faint but still alive. They said he shouldn't have made it through the night, not with the temperatures dropping the way they did, not that far off the trail without a shelter. Just endless snow and trees swallowed every sign of life. Tom told them about the cabin, about the man who opened the door, about the warmth that kept him alive. The rescuers exchanged looks, but said nothing. Days later, in a quiet hum of a hospital, a park ranger stopped into Tom's room, a worn folder tucked under his arm. "You mentioned someone named Jack," the ranger said gently. "There was a man by that name, disappeared up on that mountain nearly 20 years ago." He paused, weighing the words. "Locals say he died in a blizzard trying to lead a lost hiker to safety." Tom didn't answer. He just stared at the wall, eyes distant, the crackle of the phantom fire echoing in his mind. The ranger paused, his hand on resting on the folder. "We never found the body," he said softly, then set it down and left the room without another word. For a long time, Tom just stared at it. Finally, he reached out and opened the cover. Inside, only a few pages, a brief report, a couple lines of typed facts, and then a photograph. Faded edges curled with time. A man stood in the frame, wrapped in a thick flannel shirt. His beard was streaked with silver, his expression calm, eyes full of quiet strength. It was him, the man from the cabin. Tom stared at the photograph, and the sterile sounds of the hospital slipped away. In their place came the low crackle of firewood, the groan of old beams settling, and the wind still clawing at the cabin's walls, frantically trying to get in. Tom watched as the snow drifted past the window, soft and soundless. "Thank you," he whispered. He didn't know how it was possible, whether the cabin had ever even existed, but it was there when he needed it most. Somehow, some way, it saved him. Thank you for listening. If this tale lingers in your thoughts long after it ends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss another. Until next time.